So my craft show's done, and it's time to talk about it. So, first thing that I want to say is that I know that this show is normally good. And this time it was very, very bad. That being said, I think that there's a lot of reasons for it, and I'm going to get into several of those reasons, but let's go right into what you probably came to this video for, which is, what did I sell? So, this was a 2-day show. It went on Friday and Saturday. Friday it was from 10 to 7, and Saturday it was from 10 to 5. So, Friday, we got there at 7:30. Setup started at 7. You could come anytime between 7 and 9. The only rule was you had to get your vehicles out of there by 9 o'clock. So I did this show with a friend, and she has 3 booths and I have 1. Her stuff takes a long time to set up, so we tried to make sure that we could get there early. I could get everything out of my car, get my car parked, and then help her get all of her stuff out so that she could get parked. My stuff was ready at like 10 after 9. I was good to go. So I had 50 minutes before the show started to help her. We got all her tents up. I think they were still setting up for quite a while afterwards, but that's really, really typical for her just because she has so much inventory. She is a jewelry vendor, and she does really amazing work, which I'll get into later. But that being said, my rule was at 10 o'clock, I am in my booth. Because if I'm not in my booth and there's nobody in my booth, people are going to look, but they're not going to wait around to see who they're supposed to buy from. They're just going to move on. So I decided that I needed to be in my booth. Well, lots of lookers. My first sale, show started at 10. My first sale was at 12:25 p.m. That's pretty normal for a Friday. You know, it starts out a little bit slow. People are still at work. Fine. My first sale was my mini Winnie the Dragon, which is my variation on a miniature version of the Red Mills Crochet Winnie the Dragon pattern. And I leave mine to be a little bit customizable, so I put the wings and the tail on, but I let them pick the color they want for the horns and if they want fur on it or not. But people keep thinking that it's Falkor, which I think is the dragon from the Neverending Story. And I didn't think that that would be a popular item, but people were really disappointed when I said that that's not what it was. So I might have to actually see if I can either find a Falkor pattern or make one in like a miniature version. But I sold my mini Winnie for $50. And that was the first sale of the day and also my only mini Winnie. So I was kind of excited about that, but also kind of sad because that was a piece that got picked up a lot and people really, it kind of got their attention. 12:45 p.m. I sold a chunky cat, and I brought 4 of those with me. And they were another huge attention getter. People loved them, and I've heard from other people that those are like a huge thing this year. My next sale was at 3:42 p.m. So 3 hours in between. My next sale was 2 of my bees for $8 a piece and 1 of my turtles for $20. So that was a $36 sale. And then at 3:47, someone bought a stingray and a chicken. My mini stingrays are $6. My chickens are $12, and it's the Oak and Marlowe pattern. I think it's Mabel the chicken. So that was $18. My next sale was at 4:54, and that was a turtle. I think it was the only sea turtle I brought with me, and that was $20. And then at 5:10, I sold a chunky cat. At 5:30, I sold another chunky cat. At 6:10, I sold a mushroom, which was a freehand little piece that I did a while back. At 7, right as we were starting to close up, I sold a mini stingray for $6. So altogether, I ended up making $120 on day 1. which is lower than I wanted to make, but it's okay for a Friday. The Friday at the last show that I did, I think I made 113, so I'll take it. I spent $12 on food and snacks while I was there, so we could take that out, but I'll take that out in my end calculations. Okay, Saturday. Market's open 10 to 5. The venue really likes you to be done at 5. Like they don't really let people stay late. But you usually don't start packing up till 5, so people are still there until like 6:30, kind of getting their stuff out of the street. Almost everybody was set up at 10. There were still some people kind of finishing things up, but we were there, we were ready. We got there at like 8 o'clock. And I did not get timestamps because I was being lazy. And so I'm just going to tell you what I sold and not tell you when I sold it because I don't remember. So Saturday, the first thing that I sold, it was right when we opened. I do remember that. And it was another vendor. So my little egg bird pattern that I have on Etsy, I brought like 4 of them with me. Someone absolutely loved the style of it. And they said, oh, you know, this would be so cute as our like pet parakeet. And I said, well, what color is your parakeet? And they said, well, it's a gray body with a yellow head. And they showed me a picture and I said, I have the colors. Do you want me to make one? So I made them a little custom one of my egg bird patterns. And so yeah, that was the first sale. That was for $6 and it got me an invite to another show. And the show is 30 minutes from my house and it's over Black Friday, which I'm really excited about because I don't have any shows booked for November right now. So yeah, really excited about that. And I thought, you know, this is going to be a great day. Got this in the bag. Probably an hour went by. Not even really a person coming in to look at the booth. You know how people at craft shows, when they don't want you to interact with them, they kind of walk by your booth, but they walk by like this and then they're like side-eyeing all your stuff? That's what people were doing to me for like most of the show. Which is fine. I usually don't engage with people unless they stop inside my booth because otherwise you have 300 vendors where every 10 steps somebody's saying, hi there, how you doing? It gets irritating. And if I just stopped for a half a second to browse and someone tries to engage me in conversation, I'm probably going to leave because I have anxiety and I don't like that. So I try not to engage with someone until they actually move into my booth. And most of my booth is set up pretty forward facing, so people don't have to come in if they don't want to. That being said, you know, lots of lookers, no buyers. About an hour goes by, and a couple that had come in and looked at things on Friday told me that they would be back. And they walked up and they said, we're back. And they bought 2 of my chickens and 1 of my chunky cats. Now, I brought 4 cats. I sold 3 on Friday. That was my last one on Saturday. My chickens are 12, chunky cats are 20, so the total was 44, but he handed me a 50 and said, keep the change. My next sale was a bee for $8, and then I went probably a good hour or 2 without any sales, and then just 3 right in a row, like all within 5-10 minutes. And I sold one of my market bags for $30. They're my cotton mesh market bags. And then I sold my blueberry cow, which I love, and I was really surprised that it did not go at the last market because it got a ton of attention. And that was $40. But they paid with a card. I scanned it on my Square. I heard the boop boop that the payment was processing, and I didn't double check it. And I handed them their item and I said, have a nice day. 5 minutes later, I go to check my phone and it says payment failed. Now with Square, it doesn't save any information. I can't rerun it to try and get it to go through. So my $40 plushie, someone got it for free. And I'm really sad because I think that one was my fault. I don't think it was their fault. I think I just tapped it wrong or I didn't hold it long enough. So lesson learned. I need to make sure that I double check all of my card transactions before I let them walk away. So I'm just counting that as a 0. I'm not counting it as a loss. I'm just counting it as a 0. It made me sad. And then immediately after the blueberry cow, I had been working on another mini Winnie all day because there was a lot of interest from the friends of the girl who bought the first one. And she stopped by my booth on Friday and asked me if I had any more of them, and I said no. But I had seen the girl who bought my mini Winnie later on Friday night, and I told her, I said, listen, if your friend wants one, I will work on one tomorrow. There's no guarantees that it's going to make it on the table. But if it does and she wants it, have her stop in my booth at some point during the day. And she stopped by just as I was finishing the body. So the body was done, and she got to customize the horns and the fur and all of that, and that was a $50 item. And then I sold an egg bird for $6, another egg bird for $6. And then I had started, after I finished the dragon, I started working on another chunky cat. And a girl came into my booth and she saw that I was working on it and she said, I want that. I said, great, give me 15 minutes. So that one sold before it ever hit the table. And she bought my chunky cat and my bee and gave me a $5 tip. I also got a couple of other tips throughout the day. It ended up coming out to a total of $15 in tips, which I would never expect as a vendor, but I'll take it. I'm thrilled. We'll take that. And then I can kind of count that as a way to not feel quite so bad about losing out on that cow. Anyway, that was everything that I had sold by 4 p.m. Show ends at 5. I put a little sign out. I'm like, I'm getting desperate. I really haven't made that many sales today. And I put out a sign and I said, everything in this booth, 20% off until close. I sold a scrunchie to my vendor neighbor, and she paid me full price even though she didn't have to. So that was $4. And then I sold one mushroom boy for $8. They're normally $10, but 20% off. And then at the very end of the day, like 10 after 5. So we're supposed to be packing up, but I'm helping my vendor friend pack before I pack because we're going to be there for 3 hours for her stuff. So I had someone come up to my booth and they said, hey, I know you're closing up, but we had seen your crochet chicken in the raffle because all the vendors donate to a raffle for this show. And we put in for it and we didn't win it. And we have been looking everywhere for what vendor made that. So they came in and they bought my big chunky whale for $15, 2 of my chickens for $12 a piece, and then 1 of my turtles for $20. So after the 20% off, it was $47.20. And that was my last sale of the day, which put me at a grand total for Saturday of $237.20 before expenses. I also spent $11 in food that day, but let's just do the breakdown on what after expenses. So my first day I made $190, and my second day I made $237.20, which brought me to a grand total for the show of $427.20, and that is gross sales, not net profit. My booth fee for the show was $40. The food that I spent was $23, and gas to get to this show was $20. So if you subtract all of that, and I'm not subtracting my yarn because I don't measure my yarn, and so that would just be a ballpark, fine. So my net profit from this show was $344.20. Knowing this show, because I've been to this show as a customer and as a vendor helper, just not a vendor of my own, I expected more. But let's get into that. So, this show has been going, I think this is the 17th annual for this show. It started out bad and it stayed bad. So, like I said, the show's been going on for 17 years. My vendor friend has been doing this show for 14 of those 17 years. This was her worst year by a lot. She usually clears over $1,000 that weekend at that show after all of her expenses. And this year, I think she cleared maybe 520, 560. It really, really bad for her. The lowest she's ever done. And we were talking to some of the other vendors, and they also said this is the worst year they've ever had at this show. I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. And I know that there are some vendors that I spoke to who said they won't come back because of how this show went. So, number one, this year, this show had a new coordinator. Now, if you watched my last Crochet Market Day video, I talked about how big of a flop that market was. And a lot of it came down to the coordinator and some of the actions that were taken there, or actions that weren't taken there that really should have. I am much more inclined to give this coordinator some slack. Number one, this show had well over 70 vendors. Most of them had multiple booths, anywhere from 2 booths to 4 booths. And they were literally just kind of fitting everybody in where they could. So when we got there on Friday to set up, me and my vendor friend, who specifically requested we put our applications in together, our payment in together, we both said on our applications, like, listen, we need to be together. Because the only option that they had for doing booths was as a 1 or a 2. And the pricing was different depending on which way you went. Well, my vendor friend needed 3 booths and I needed 1, so we put in 2 and 2, and we said we need to be together because this is how we're going to run it. And they separated us because someone else who had been doing the show just as long, if not longer, than my friend had, decided to call and pitch a fit about the location that she was put in this year, because everybody moved. Most of the time, the vendors for this show have the same spot every year. This year, they didn't, and people were angry about it. I don't know exactly what the reasoning was for that, but I know that a lot of the storefronts also had booths this year, and so they put them in front of their storefronts, and so people who used to be there got bumped. Makes sense to me. We brought it up to the coordinator and said, hey, listen, this isn't going to work. Like, we have to be together because the logistics of our booths have to work that way. Like, I don't need 2 booths, and my friend needs 3 booths. So to have us separated like this, there's no way that we can make this work. She said, not a problem. We have extra space set aside just in case there were issues. So we're going to move you off the street and we're going to move you up onto the hill. You're right next to all the food trucks. You're also right next to all the bathrooms. So people will be up on the hill. We said, great, fantastic. That works out great. That coordinator came up to us at least twice, if not 3 times, to thank us for being so kind. So I'm guessing that some of the vendors were not so kind. So she was handling a huge show. There's also a car show and a motorcycle ride and kids stuff, and like it's a huge show. And she's trying to step into some pretty big shoes from the last coordinator. When we had an issue, it was resolved immediately. It was resolved nicely. At one point, the porta potties ran out of toilet paper, and we were kind of panicking because we're like, this happened at my last show, and that was not great, and it caused people to leave. That coordinator was right in there. We had toilet paper in there within the hour. Everything got restocked. New trash cans came in because the trashes were full. They got that solved right away. They checked in, and when it was time for us to load out, all of the vendors had to park like 5-6 blocks away. They're out there on golf carts. You need a ride? We will take you to your car. We will help you haul stuff, whatever you need. So even though there was like not a great experience with the initial setup, I think the coordinator did a great job with what she had. And I think that any of the problems that arose weren't necessarily her fault. And I think a show that big maybe needs more than one coordinator. She did a good job. And I'm going to leave it at that. I think that this show has done better in years past for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's an election year. Election years aren't great for craft shows, and I've heard that from so many vendors. Number two, There was another craft show in the next town over this weekend, which has not been a thing before. This show happens on the same weekend every year. So this other show came in and stole our weekend. I don't know anything about that show. I'm not going to disparage that show, but you know, fine. But I think the biggest detractor is that this is a really small rural town. It's a lot of cottages on lakes. So it's a lot of secondary homes and vacation homes for people. Well, the Labor Day laws here in Michigan got repealed, and so kids are going back to school before Labor Day. Well, it's August 23rd, 24th. Kids are already back in school, which means that people didn't come up this weekend to vacation because they're already in school mode. So I think we lost a lot of our clientele. So I think that, you know, between money being tight, a second craft show going on, and school going back too soon, I think a lot of that rolled into why this was not a great year. For me specifically, though, and I talked to a couple other vendors about this too, this is not a juried show. Anybody can get in. They take applications till they're full. I was one of, at minimum, 4 crochet artists at this show. All plushie crochet artists. There were other people doing crochet, but 4 that did plushies specifically. I talked with one of the vendors, and because of how bad her experience was this year, she won't come back to this show next year. And she's been doing it for like 5 years. She said it was so abysmal for her, she won't do it again. There was another vendor who was kitty corner to her, also selling plushies. They put them right next to each other. And that girl I didn't talk to. I don't know how well she did. And then the other vendor that I know was there, and I only know because there were other crochet items that I was seeing that were not on the tables of the 2 that I knew about. I don't know how well she did, but she probably did better than all of us. So we were on the far end of the map, away from everything. So up on the hill, we had like the main street and then all the vendors. So Main Street has the car show and live music and all of that. We are on this road. Here's the car show. Here's me up on the hill. There's a few blocks. So the crochet vendor up here probably did pretty well. Once they kind of got to that halfway point, a lot of customers started turning back because they just felt like they saw all they needed to see. But I know that there was at least 4 crochet vendors. I know that there was at least 2, possibly 3 3D printing vendors. A lot of people just making the same stuff. And so it really just came down to where you were placed. And I was kind of dead last because people had to go all the way to the end to get up the hill. So I was one of the last booths people see, if they even made it that far. So, you know, I'm actually kind of grateful to have done the sales that I did. But we talked to other vendors that were down on the street near us, and they all said, no, people were turning back. They just didn't even come down this far. And even if they did, people weren't buying. So at least I know it wasn't a location issue. It was just this year. To break it down a little bit further, would I go back to this show? Yeah. Yeah, I would. A couple of reasons. Number 1, my friend that I vend with has a cottage in this town. We get to stay at the cottage the whole weekend, so it becomes like a mini vacation. So even though I did not hit my marks at all for what I wanted to do at this show based on how I thought the show was going to go, I would go back. And I also think that they'll make some tweaks, and I think that the show will be better next year. I think the coordinator did a good job for what she was given. I think she learned a ton, and I think she's going to do a lot better next year. And I think that I have now made some vendor friends, and I like this show. I like where it's at. I'm comfortable with it. It's an easy drive. Like, I think it's 50 minutes from my house, 45, 50 minutes. And then I get to stay there. I get to stay 5 minutes away from the show for free for the whole weekend. Not upset. So yeah, I would do this show again, but I'm still disappointed. You know, I'm disappointed at the show. I'm disappointed that I lost out on that sale on that blueberry cow. And I'm kind of sad that I planned for things to go differently. So as an aside on this that I have not touched yet is the amount of inventory that I brought. I brought about $1,700 worth of inventory. I sold a lot of the same stuff, and it was stuff I wasn't expecting to sell as much. So the chunky cats, I sold 5 out of 5. 4 that I brought to the show and the one I made at the show, which sold before it ever hit the table. So I'm going to be making some more of those before my September market. My egg birds, they finally did okay. I only have 1 left. I brought 4 and I sold 4, but I made the 1 custom. My chickens did okay. They didn't do as well as I wanted, but they did okay. I'm going to make a few more bees because I sold a few of those. No octos sold. None. And I made leggy frogs for the show, which I don't love, but other people seem to love, and they got a lot of attention. They did not sell. My big Winnie dragon did not sell. Not surprised. It's a big item. And knowing this town, it wasn't going to sell. My 2 Stitch Studio CA bunnies did not sell. They got a lot of attention. Didn't sell. My hermit crab did not sell. I've had him for 2 shows now. All of my mini stingrays are gone. None of my mini whales sold. I brought, I think, 29. None sold at the last market, none sold at this market. So I'm gonna hold on to them. They got a lot of attention. People thought they were cute. But I'm definitely not making more. But yeah. I think this show did okay. I'll do it again. And I hope that some of this maybe helped give you some perspective. It gave me some, and it makes me feel like maybe my last market wasn't quite as much of a flop as what I made it out to be. That being said, I do not regret making that video. I think it was worth it. I think that maybe this is just not the year, but I also have some bigger shows coming up, and I wonder if I'll do better at bigger shows. My next show is September 20th to 21st, and it's an hour south of me, which is a little bit more towards like Detroit Metro. I don't like to give away where I live, so I'm not going to get into too many details about that. But it's about an hour away. It's in front of a coffee shop, which I love, and we're starting to get into fall, and so I'm going to be doing some Halloween prep. But yeah, I think that one's going to be good, and then I possibly have another big show that I'm going to do last minute. But I'm not going to give away any details on that because I don't know if I'm going to sign up. So yeah, I hope this video helped you, and if you liked it and you want to see more of this, subscribe to my channel. I'm still trying to build it, and I take questions, comments, snide remarks, leave it all. Still gets me engagement either way. And also, I like to know what people like and what they don't. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. If you didn't like it, just skip it. It's okay. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.